I thought I was choosing a better life when I left my husband during his struggles. I believed money and excitement mattered more than loyalty. But the man I chose destroyed everything, while the man I left behind built an empire without me. This is my story and my deepest regret. My name is Sophia Miller 41F, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would walk away from her husband when things got hard. But life has a way of testing people, and during those tests you either show your strength or your weakness. Sadly, I now realize I chose weakness. My husband back then, Daniel Miller 44M, was the kind of man everyone respected. He worked as a senior project manager at a well-known construction company in Chicago. We had a comfortable life with our daughter Emily 16F, who was still in high school at the time. We weren't rich, but we had security, vacations once a year, dinners at nice restaurants, and a cozy home in the suburbs. Then came COVID, and everything started collapsing like dominoes. Daniel lost his job after the company cut nearly half its staff. At first, I thought, it's okay, we'll manage. But weeks turned into months, and the stress only grew heavier. Bills piled up, our savings started draining, and the man who once carried himself with so much confidence looked broken every single day. I remember one night vividly. Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, his head buried in his hands, while unopened envelopes scattered around him. His voice cracked when he said, "I'm sorry, Sophia. I'll fix this. I just need more time." But I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to drown in debt and live with uncertainty. That's when Ethan Parker 46M entered the picture. Ethan was someone I met through a mutual friend at a neighborhood gathering. He was charming, loud, and carried himself like he owned the world. Unlike Daniel, he seemed carefree, always with a smile and a pocket full of cash. He told me he made money fast and knew how to beat the system. I didn't realize at the time what that meant: gambling. Ethan promised me excitement and financial freedom. He made me feel alive when Daniel could barely look me in the eye without guilt. Slowly, I started comparing them. My broken husband who was struggling, and this confident man who made me forget the weight of responsibility. It sounds cruel now, but at the time, I convinced myself that I deserved more. That I shouldn't have to suffer just because Daniel lost his job. So I did the unthinkable. I packed my things, left Daniel, and told Emily I needed space. She chose to stay with her father, and I told myself she'd understand one day. Looking back, I can't believe how selfish I was. Ethan welcomed me into his apartment downtown. For a while, it felt thrilling. Nights out at casinos, fancy dinners, expensive wine. It was like living in a movie. I thought I had escaped the stress of bills and unemployment. But reality has a nasty way of catching up. Because as time went on, I realized Ethan wasn't what I thought he was. Yes, he had money, but he didn't earn it. He gambled every day, sometimes winning big, but more often losing even bigger. And soon, the man I thought was my savior started spiraling into desperation. I kept telling myself, at least it's better than being stuck with Daniel and his failure. But deep down, I knew I had traded security for chaos. One night, after Ethan lost nearly $70,000 in a single poker game, I sat there staring at him as he raged and threw things around the apartment. That's when it hit me. That night, something cruelly honest clicked into place. I hadn't traded struggle for stability. I'd traded a steady husband for a storm. The apartment reeked of whiskey and fury, drywall dust floating where his fist met the wall, poker tabs blinking like tiny alarms on his laptop. I told myself I couldn't go back because of pride, but the truth was uglier. I was terrified to face the man I'd abandoned and the woman I'd become. Little did I know, my story was about to take a turn I could have never imagined. Because while Ethan was drowning us in debt, Daniel, my ex-husband, was quietly building something far bigger than I ever thought possible. Life with Ethan quickly turned into a nightmare. At first, his charm masked the chaos, but once the money started disappearing, so did his patience. I would wake up to find him sitting at the dining table, eyes bloodshot, shuffling cards or staring at his laptop, betting on some late-night overseas game. The expensive dinners stopped. The laughter stopped. And eventually, the The security I thought I had traded Daniel for vanished completely. Within a year, Ethan had burned through everything. He sold his car, pawned his watches, and borrowed money from dangerous people. I tried to reason with him, but his answer was always the same. One good win, Sophia. One good win, and everything changes. But those wins never came. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers about Daniel. Mutual friends, people I hadn't spoken to in months, mentioned how he had started something new, a construction startup named Millionaire. At first, I dismissed it, thinking it was just talk. But the more I heard, the more real it became. Then one afternoon, while scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw his profile. Daniel Miller, founder and CEO of Millionaire, a fast-growing company that had already landed several big contracts. There was even a photo of him in a suit, smiling confidently, standing with a group of new employees. I stared at that picture for a long time. His profile wasn't just a photo, it was a timeline of wins. New hires. A city permit approved ahead of schedule. A hospital wing contract announced in a trade article I'd never read before. Even the comments stung. Proud of you, Dan. Couldn't have happened to a better leader. I scrolled until my thumb hurt, looking for the version of him I'd left behind, and realizing that man no longer existed either. And me? I was stuck in a cramped apartment with a gambler who couldn't even pay rent. I drafted a dozen messages I never sent. Shame kept deleting them. The man I'd left at a kitchen table buried in overdue notices was now posing with hard hats and signed contracts, standing taller without me. Every unsent hi felt like a confession I wasn't brave enough to make. One night, Ethan lost nearly everything we had left. He screamed, punched a hole in the wall, and stormed out. That was the last straw for me. I packed a bag and left, with only a few $100s in my account. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. No husband, no partner, no home. I tried applying for jobs, but the world had changed since I last worked. My skills felt outdated, and rejection emails became my daily routine. The humiliation grew heavier with each. We regret to inform you. Then came the day that would flip my world upside down. I got an interview call from a growing company, Millionaire. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Maybe it was another firm with the same name. But when I checked the address and company profile, my heart sank. It was Daniel's company. My ex-husband. The man I betrayed. The man I left behind. For hours, I debated whether to even go. What if he humiliated me? What if he threw my past in my face? But the truth was, I needed a job desperately, and maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to start over. The morning of the interview, I wore the only professional outfit I had left and tried to steady my shaking hands. As I walked into the sleek glass building, I felt like an intruder. The walls were lined with awards and photos of projects Daniel had completed. His name was everywhere. And then, the moment I had dreaded came. The door opened, and there he was. Daniel. My ex-husband. My mistake. My regret. He looked older, wiser, but also sharper. His eyes locked on mine, and for a second, neither of us spoke. I expected anger, bitterness, maybe even contempt. But instead, he smiled politely and said, "Sophia, please have a seat." In that moment, I realized my past had finally caught up with me. Sitting across from Daniel in that glass-walled office felt like being under a spotlight. My palms were sweating, and every tick of the clock reminded me of what I had done to this man. He didn't mention the past. He didn't bring up the nights I screamed at him about money, or the day I walked out with my suitcase. Instead, he treated me like any other applicant. He asked questions about my experience, my skills, and what I could bring to the company. His tone was polite but distant, professional, almost cold. That hurt more than any insult he could have thrown at me. When the interview ended, I expected a firm handshake and a dismissal. But instead, a week later, I got the call. "Congratulations, Sophia. You've been selected for the role." At first, I mistook the offer for mercy, for some small ember of the kindness he once had for me. But the longer I sat under fluorescent lights, buried in deadlines I barely understood, the clearer it became. This wasn't charity. This was a front row seat to the life he built after I walked away. My first day at Miller Builds was overwhelming. The office was huge, buzzing with young, ambitious employees who looked at me like I was out of place. I was assigned to work under Clara Jameson 32F, one of Daniel's top managers. Clara was sharp, efficient, and had zero patience for mistakes. She treated me like a trainee, barking orders, piling files on my desk, and making sure I was the last one to leave every night. I wanted to complain, but deep down, I knew this wasn't an accident. Daniel had placed me here on purpose. Every time I passed his office, I could see him through the glass walls. Confident, focused, respected. He rarely acknowledged me beyond a brief nod, but there was something in his eyes. Not anger, not bitterness. Something colder, detachment. As if I was just another employee, nothing more. That cut deeper than rage ever could. The work itself was relentless. Late nights drafting reports, early mornings correcting errors Clara would throw back at me, endless meetings where I barely understood the corporate jargon anymore. My body ached, my eyes burned, and I started questioning whether I could keep up. And yet, a part of me wanted to endure it. I thought if I can prove myself, maybe Daniel will see that I've changed. Maybe he'll forgive me. But the truth was, I wasn't built for this anymore. I had spent years living off someone else's money, avoiding responsibility, running from accountability. And now it was all crashing down on me. One evening, after staying back late to finish a report Clara demanded, I saw Daniel leaving his office. He stopped, looked at me, and said calmly, "You don't have to do this, Sophia. Nobody forced you to be here." Then he walked away. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't kind. It was worse than both. It was indifference. That night, I cried in the office bathroom. Not because of the workload, not because of Clara's endless demands, but because I realized the man I once left behind had finally stopped caring about me. And for the first time, I started to wonder if this job, this punishment, was his way of giving me exactly what I deserved. The weeks at Miller Builds drained me in ways I never expected. At first, I told myself this was just an adjustment period, that I could still learn, adapt, and prove my worth. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized I didn't belong there. Clara kept pushing me harder. She would slam files on my desk, point out every small mistake, and remind me that deadlines waited for no one. The younger employees moved fast, spoke in terms I couldn't understand, and treated me like an outsider. Every day, I felt like I was drowning in a world that had moved on without me. I started to lose sleep. My hands shook when I typed. Coffee replaced meals, and anxiety became my constant shadow. I would see Daniel in the hallway sometimes, walking with his team, his head held high, discussing projects and contracts like a true leader. He didn't need volume to fill a room. He moved through meetings like a metronome, measured, precise, impossible to ignore. People adjusted their pace to match his. I realized leadership had replaced the silence I once mistook for defeat. He had become everything I thought he couldn't be. And me? I had become a ghost in his empire. One Friday night, after Clara handed me yet another pile of revisions, I sat at my desk staring at the papers, and I felt something snap inside me. I wasn't strong enough for this. I wasn't smart enough anymore. I wasn't the woman who could keep up. I left the office late, walked past Daniel's glass office one last time, and saw him sitting there alone, reviewing documents. He didn't even notice me. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. That was the worst part. I no longer mattered to him. The next Monday morning, I didn't show up. I sent in my resignation through email. No explanations, no goodbyes. Just silence. For days, I wandered the city, unsure of where to go or what to do. I thought about Ethan and how he had destroyed everything with his gambling. I thought about Daniel and how I had destroyed everything with my choices. I thought about Emily, my daughter, who barely spoke to me anymore. The truth was clear now. I had thrown away a good man when he was at his lowest, only to end up with someone who dragged me into hell. And by the time I realized my mistake, Daniel had already risen without me. I wanted to believe there was still a chance for forgiveness, but I knew better. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. So I carried my regret quietly, like a scar no one else could see. I was the woman who walked away from love, from family, from stability, and I had nothing left to show for it. I ruined myself piece by piece, choice by choice, until there was nothing left to ruin. That's where my story ends. The man I left has everything I once dreamed of, and I'm left with the echo of what I threw away. Some mistakes don't just haunt you. They quietly, relentlessly outlive you. Sometimes I see Emily's name on my phone and hope she'll answer if I call, but the silence between us feels heavier than words could ever fix.